What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Satellarknight deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is an amazing deck that can actually turn skip your opponent, which is super cool to be able to do. This deck can also make some absolutely incredible fields, so without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in every single video, getting a signed card in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Lyran. This card is definitely a 3 of the deck and helps out with so many different plays. This card is always treated as a Constellar card and a Tellarknight card, finally fusing the 2 archetypes together with awesome support. But this card has a really good ability that if a Tellarknight or a Constellar monster is normal summoned to your field, except a copy of this card, then you can actually special summon this card from your hand like a copy of Kage Tokage, which is a really cool thing about this card to instantly get you 2 monsters on the field. And if this card is summoned, you can actually add a Tellarknight spell from your deck to your hand, which is an awesome effect for this card to be able to do. We then play 2 copies of Alteran. Alteran is really good as a 2 of the deck, but you really only need 2 copies of this card because it's so searchable. It has the ability that it's always treated as a Constellar card and a Tellarknight monster, and it has a really cool ability. If this card is summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of Light and Dark XZ monsters that you control and destroy them, which is a really insane effect, especially if you summon this card during your opponent's turn. You can pop multiple cards on the field to disrupt them. This card also has the ability if a Tellarknight card or a Constellar monster is special summoned to your field, except a copy of this card, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard. Also, you cannot declare attacks for the rest of the turn except with XZ monsters, which is not that big of a deal because that's pretty much all we're playing in the extra deck anyways. We're then playing 3 copies of Deneb. Deneb is still an insanely powerful card in the deck, because if this card is summoned, you get to add a Tellarknight monster from your deck to your hand, getting you the exact cards that you need. But this card is amazing, especially if you open up this card plus Lyran. You're pretty much going to go full combo, because you're going to get searches off this card and Lyran, while also getting 2 monsters on your side of the field, so you can step into really powerful cards like Tellarknight, Constellar, Caduceus, so you can start your turn skip combo. We're then playing 2 copies of Altair. Altair is really good as a walking monster reborn, and this card is just amazing in the deck. It does have a really cool ability. If this card is summoned, you can target a Tellarknight monster in your graveyard and special summon that monster in defense position, but for the rest of the turn, monsters that you control cannot attack except for Tellarknight monsters, which is a little bit of a downside of this card, and because we do play a bunch of cards in the extra deck that are not actually Tellarknight monsters, you do have to watch out for that effect. We then play 2 copies of Anukalai. Anukalai is still a really cool 2 of the deck that's basically walking Foolish Burial. If this card is summoned, you send a Tellarknight card from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of this card. We then play 2 copies of Vega. Vega is still amazing in the deck if you don't open up Lyran, because it has the ability, if this card is summoned, you special summon out a Tellarknight monster from your hand, which is still a really good effect to help you get 2 level 4s on the field. We then play a single copy of Sirius. Sirius is seriously a good card in this deck, because if this card is summoned, you get to target 5 Tellarknight monsters in your graveyard and shuffle all 5 of those cards into the deck and then draw a card, which is really good just to help you dig into the deck while also recycling some of your resources, because you're going to go through your resources with this deck like crazy. So this card is definitely a 1 of in the build. We're then playing 3 copies of Constellar Caduceus. Constellar Caduceus is really cool in this deck as a 3-up, because this card helps out so much by extending your plays that if you control a Constellar monster except another copy of this card, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is really good to just extend your plays with this card. And during your main phase, you can add a Constellar spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is an amazing effect, and a Constellar XZ monster uses this card as a material, gains the ability that if this card battles a light or dark monster before damage calculation, you actually banish that monster, making it really easy to deal with boss monsters that your opponent might put on the field. We then play 2 copies of Sheraton. Sheraton is really good in this deck as a 2-up. If this card is normal summon, you can add a Constellar monster from your deck to your hand, which can help out a lot in this particular deck, especially since you can copy this card's effect with your copy of your Tellarknight Constellar Caduceus, getting you a search off that card's ability, which is just really nice. We then play a single copy of Pollux. Pollux is also a really good 1-of in the deck, because during the turn this card was normal summoned, you can actually normal summon a Constellar monster in addition to your normal summoner set, which is going to extend your plays even even further, so this card is really good in the deck as a one-of. We then play 3 copies of Saitama. Saitama is definitely a 3 on the deck. So this card just gives you an additional level 4 on your side of the field, because you can actually reveal this card in your hand and then normal summon a spirit monster to your side of the field, in addition to your normal summoner set, which is great to be able to just reveal Saitama in your hand and then normal summon it to your side of the field, and then follow it up with a bunch of different Satellarknight cards, because you already have a level 4 in your field. You don't have to worry so much about your initial normal summon, so this card is great in the deck as a 3 of. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is just a great hand trap in this deck. You can play any hand trap you want in this position, but I really like Ash Blossom because it does stop your opponent from touching the deck. So this card is great as a 3 of in the build. Another hand trap that I have considered playing in this card's place is Nibiru, which is just a really awesome card to break your opponent's board, especially if you go second. But this card is just really good as a 3 of in the deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of Rhoda. Rhoda's really good in the deck because pretty much all of our Satellarknight monsters are warriors, so we can search them out with this card, which is really nice for this card in the deck. We then play a single copy of Monster Reborn. This is great just to extend your plays, because you want to get as many Satellarknight monsters as you can on your side of the field, so you can go in for your turn skip, and this card just helps you out with that to extend your plays. We then play a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is great just to stop your opponent from hand trapping you while you're going in for all of your plays. We play a single copy of Double or Nothing. Double or Nothing is insanely good in this deck. This card is so good because you can make your copy of Utopia Double, detach your material from Utopia Double, make Utopia on top of Utopia Double, add Double or Nothing from deck to hand, and then once you do, you actually will summon out that Utopia at 5,000 attack points. If your opponent leaves a monster in attack position with 2,000 or less, you pretty much win the game, because you're just going to attack with that Utopia, detach your material to negate the attack, drop Double or Nothing, and go back in for 10,000 attack points, doing at least 8,000 points of damage to OTK. This card is amazing in the deck if your opponent leaves the opening, and is really cool to catch your opponent off guard with Utopia Double. We then play a single copy of Constellar Twinkle. Constellar Twinkle is really good in this deck as a 1-0, because this card helps out a lot. It lets you target a Constellar monster that you control and increase its level by 1 or 2, which is great to be able to work with your copy of Sharon. And it also has the ability, if this card is in the graveyard, you can actually banish a Constellar monster from your graveyard and add this card from your graveyard back to your hand, which is a pretty good effect to be able to do. We then play 2 copies of Skybridge. Skybridge is great in this deck because it actually lets you tag out your Satellarknight monsters, which is just amazing to be able to do by summoning out a different form from the deck, letting you target a Satellarknight monster that you control, and then special summon out a Satellarknight monster with a different name from your deck, and if you do, shovel the targeted monster into the deck. And while that monster that's special summoned by this card's effect is face up on the field, you cannot special summon monsters except for Satellarknight monsters, which is not that big of a deal, because we have plenty of ways to get that monster off the field by using it as an XZ material. We then play 3 copies of Constellar Tellarknights. This card is one of the most powerful support cards we got out of Cyberstorm Access, and it's super good in the deck because when this card is activated, you can special summon a Tellarknight or a Constellar monster from your hand or your graveyard, being a monster reborn. It's also searchable, which is amazing. It has a really cool effect that you can actually target a Tellarknight or a Constellar XZ monster you control, and then special summon from your X deck one Tellarknight or Constellar monster with a different rank by using that XZ monster that you control as a material, and this is treated as an XZ summon. You can transfer all materials from that monster that you had on the field to the new monster that you put on the field, which is really cool. Essentially being like a rank up magic, which is absolutely amazing. I love this card, and it helps you actually do the turn skip, so this card is definitely a 3 of in the deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 3 traps, and that's going to be 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Impermanence is really good because it can stop your opponent's monster effects and lock down entire columns of spells and traps if you set this card to the field and then activate it. This card is really an amazing hand trap, but I have considered dropping it for the Nibirus that I mentioned earlier, which is a really good hand trap to be able to use in the deck to deal with your opponent's field, especially since we have great outs to Nibiru. But this card is great in this particular build and has worked great in testing to be able to stop your opponent's monster effects if you do go second, and it's a great card to make your opponent stop playing. And this card is really good in the deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start off with 2 copies of Tellarknight Caduceus. This card is amazing because this card is a Tellarknight and a Constellar monster, which is just absolutely amazing. It has the ability, if this card is XZ summon, you can target a Tellarknight and or Constellar card in your graveyard and add them back to your hand. You can also detach a Tellarknight, or I can actually have the ability to banish a Tellarknight or a Constellar monster from your hand or deck, and then detach a material from this card, and the effect becomes that monster when it was normal summoned, letting you copy the effect of cards like Sheraton, which will actually let you get searches, which is just super cool about this card. I love that this card just copies those effects and actually lets you add cards back from your graveyard to your hand when it's summoned, which is really amazing. Plus, this card says 2+ level 4 monsters, which is great about this card because you can actually summon it out with multiple materials, so you can get the turn skip. We then play a single copy of Ptolemaeus. Ptolemaeus is actually how we turn skip by getting 7 materials under this card, which is actually pretty easy to do in this deck, and it's really an amazing combo to be able to pull off, to be able to turn skip your opponent, and you can actually do it multiple times, which is crazy to be able to win the game. We then play a single copy of the Dark Tellarknight. The Dark Tellarknight is really good because it actually lets us make our monsters that require 3 materials for just 2, because this card can actually help you summon out those other monsters, which is really, really cool. I also love this card because all face-up monsters on the field become dark, which is really good, and you can also detach a material in this card and then discard a card to special summon from your extract 1 light Tellarknight XZ monster by using this face-up card that you control as XZ material, which is a really good effect to be able to use because it helps you make your copies of Trevere or Deltaros for 1 less material. We then play a single copy of Deltaros. This card is great because it can pop cards on the field, and it's a great card to be able to play as a 1-up in the deck. Play a single copy of Trevere. Trevere can bounce all the cards that are on the field back to the hand, which is insane to be able to do, and this card is really good as a 1-of in the build. We then play a single copy of Pleiades because we can make Pleiades, and the balances are just really nice in this deck to be able to use with this card, and it's a great card to be able to put on the field. We then play a single copy of Satellarknight Constellar Diamond. This card is amazing and was actually released all the way back in Secrets of Eternity, hinting that eventually we were going to combine the 2 archetypes between Tellarknight and Constellar, which is just super cool that they hinted at it all the way back in Arc 5. But this card is amazing because it just deals with all sorts of different dark monsters that your opponent might put on the field, and it's super easy to make because during your main phase 2, you can also XZ summon this card by using a Tellarknight XZ monster you control as XZ material, which is really cool. We then play a single copy of M7. M7 is just really an amazing card to rank up into, and it's a great card to be able to play in this deck. We then play a single copy of number 39, Utopia Double. Utopia Double is great because you detach a material from this card, search double or nothing from deck to hand, make a copy of Utopia on top of it, and when you do, that Utopia comes out at 5,000 attack points, and you can then attack into an opponent's monster, but not directly, negate the attack with Utopia's effect, drop double or nothing, and attack again for 10,000 attack points, essentially ending the game if your opponent has a monster with 2,000 or less attack and they are at 8,000 life points. We then play a single copy of Gaga Gaga Magician. This card helps you make your copy of your F-Zero by reviving back a copy of an XZ monster, which is really cool. We then play the single copy of F-Zero. F-Zero is really good because you just use 2 monsters that are not number monsters to make this card, and then you make your copy of Utopic Draco Future on top of it, which is a walking gate, which is super good to be able to put this card on your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Double A Zeus to round out the extract, and this card is just great because we're playing all XZs in the extract, and this card is awesome in this particular build because it board wipes the field. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Tellarknight before, you should definitely give this deck a try because it's absolutely crazy to turn skip your opponent or establish some really insane boards. The cool thing about this build is you don't have to turn skip your opponent to end the game. You can just make some absolutely insane boards against your opponent, and this deck can do that extremely easily. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.